Continuing on the theme a bit, our next guest is at the forefront of biotechnology and innovation, Kennedy Schaal from Rejuve Bio. Her work explores how artificial intelligence and new technologies can accelerate the discovery of longevity therapeutics. In her presentation today, Technology and AI for Longevity Research, will show us how data-driven tools are reshaping research and personal health optimization. Please welcome Dr. Kennedy Schaal.
Hi, everyone. It's truly an honor to be here at the first Longevity Summit in Mauritius. I want to thank Damien and Nadine. Everything has been absolutely amazing these last couple days. I'm excited to talk here in Mauritius, which is incredible that this nation has taken on this conversation and the vision to lead this conversation in longevity on the African continent. And so today I'm going to talk about how our new research tools using artificial intelligence can help us live not just longer lives, but better lives by identifying the actual biological causes of aging and not just the correlations in the data. This will help lead to better basic science and more successful translation from the benchtop to the clinic. This is about building the next generation of medicine, and that's medicine that actually understands why we age and not just what happens when we do. So, aging, as most of us in this room will agree, is the most important medical challenge of our time. It drives nearly every chronic disease that we know about, and it's not a single pathway or mutation, but it's a network of interacting genes, proteins, and environmental factors that and so to intervene effectively, we need to uncover mechanistic causality. And that's which genes, which variants, proteins actually drive these downstream processes and how they differ across individuals. So that's when artificial intelligence, when used correctly, can make possible identifying actually what those mechanisms are and how we can solve those problems for populations and individuals. We can connect the dots in a way that shows how the biology works and not just what's statistically linked. So we like to think of AI as a collaborator. Like James just said, I absolutely agree. I don't see humans going anywhere. I don't see human doctors disappearing. AI should definitely be a collaborator in the lab and in the clinic. It's the most powerful when it doesn't just surface those patterns, but it helps scientists reason about why those patterns exist. And so the systems we're building at Rejuve Bio in particular go beyond the large language models. We're using new architecture that's a hybrid of symbolic and probabilistic logic networks and evolutionary learning algorithms. It functions a lot more like your brain would. So, your brain doesn't just process information in one way or learn in one way. It uses a lot of different methods to ingest and reason over the data that it takes in. So our systems, instead of just saying like X correlates with Y, the AI can propose X causes Y through this mechanism or something like that. The difference between prediction and understanding is what leads to better, more effective therapies. Sometimes in labs, we like to say that we want to fail faster, as fast as possible, and preferably at the beginning of a research project. So that removes most of the guesswork from what we're trying to figure out. And it's a more efficient way of going down the pathway of what our hypotheses might be wanting to tell us. So in using artificial intelligence, we want to help scientists fail faster, basically expanding what we can see and test. And so by analyzing billions of data points from genetics and imaging and clinical records, AI can find subtle patterns that would likely take humans years to uncover. It helps us focus time and funding on the most promising hypotheses, and that's especially critical for nations that are on limited budgets and constrained by limited resources. It's also important in, wealthier nations, in my opinion, especially in the US. It's hard to get investors in science sometimes because research people are looking for that immediate ROI. If we can do something that helps scientists, deliver that for their investors, perhaps that will spur more investment in science as well. So, a little bit about how AI actually understands human biology. This is a snapshot of a couple of frames from our actual platform, just to get the scope of the size of these data sets that we're dealing with. This is an example using 72 million nodes and 109 million edges. So a node is a data point, and an edge is all different ways that those data points can be connected. So we teach our AI not to just memorize the data, but to actually reason over these massive graphs and to connect genes and proteins and environmental signals into a living systems model of biology. That's our goal. Every new data set makes the system smarter, makes us more precise, makes everything more context aware. It's like a living, evolving map of life, and one that learns continuously as we import more data and as a particular project advances. So more on the map that AI is building. I mentioned the word knowledge graphs. A knowledge graph is essentially a giant graph of graphs. It's like a massive map of connections. In this case, linking genes to proteins, proteins to a example symptom like inflammation, inflammation to various aging phenotypes, and so on. Instead of isolated facts, we can build a network of relationships that reveals how everything interacts. This means that we can start to trace pathways, for example, like how diet changes inflammatory signaling, and then identify and leverage points that we could possibly use for interventions. It's a powerful tool for discovery, especially when dealing with complex diseases that don't necessarily have a single cause. So then we can go ahead and use our knowledge graphs with our hypothesis generation system, which uses a causal inference engine. And that's essentially a similar way to how your brain would look at a couple of connections and try to figure out how, not just okay, these 2 points are connected, but how and why are they connected? So this helps us figure out more of the mechanistic causality. So our hypothesis generation system would actually propose what the variant is that's causing our particular disease phenotype, rather than just the genetic association. Because a lot of times in research, when new therapies are being developed, you think you're going down the correct pathway, but with a genetic association, and then it turns out it doesn't translate well to humans because it was actually a different variant that you were targeting. Well, we want to find that answer at the very beginning, and that's what we're creating this system for, to find that at the beginning, so that that translational valley of death gradually disappears between the benchtop and the clinic. So this is a real world use case. Some people in this room probably don't know, and some of them do know, The Methuselah flies are very near and dear to my heart. They were developed first by my mentor at UC Irvine, Michael Rose, in 1980. They're a population of fruit flies that have been continuously selected for longevity. And I officially took them over in 2007. So they are one of the world's longest running evolutionary biology experiments, if not the longest. So over the course of 45 years, we have been able to extend their lifespan by 8 times compared to their controls. This is kind of the perfect test bed for using our AI systems for causal modeling. These flies live up to 8 times longer, like I said, and by analyzing their genetic data through our platform, we can identify which variants actually drive their longevity. That's something that these giant knowledge graphs and neurosymbolic AI is really good at, is cross-analyzing data sets from different species and finding these connections between seemingly unrelated data. So by mapping these causal pathways between genes and transcription factors and downstream phenotypes using these massive combined knowledge graphs between, like, humans, in this example, our Methuselah flies, we can then search for the human equivalents, which are like conserved mechanisms of resilience and repair that have been conserved across those species. And this is how our AI can turn evolutionary biology into actual actionable insights for human health. So this is our model organism that we work with. And just to highlight further the value of these long-lived animal models, this is a direct comparison between DNA variation of supercentenarian humans and our Methuselah flies. So you have the human chromosomes, obviously, on the left, and the fly chromosomes on the right. And what's really interesting is the shared pattern of DNA variation between the long-lived humans and the long-lived flies. So the mutation burden is about the same between the two species. This tells us that longevity isn't a random thing. It's encoded and reproducible, structured ways across species, and something that we can actually target and identify for therapies. This is where AI becomes essential. It helps us to go beyond these correlations and actually identify which of these variants actually drive changes in gene expression and protein networks and ultimately lifespan. In our platform, the cross data sets feed into these causal inference engines so the AI can start predicting mechanistic causality and links. So this helps us build that ultimate systems model of biology of aging that leads to better basic science and better answers to, the simple questions that have the really big downstream effects. So this is kind of the start of a new age of preventive medicine as I see it. I've always thought of longevity as preventative medicine, and we can use these models of aging as a system, and this is where preventive medicine stops becoming guesswork. We can start to see where the system breaks, and we can figure out how to intervene. And this is where the potential for precision medicine really lies. Identifying these causal drivers, we can design diagnostics, nutrition plans, and therapies that are both personalized and predictive. So that's the foundation of this era of preventative medicine, and it's where I see a country like Mauritius, with its focus on equitable healthcare and population health, can lead by example, and prevention requires that understanding of how important it is to take care of your population as a whole. And you guys can really help us in establishing good data collection protocols and we have the potential to really detect early biological signals that precede disease by years. And this is where Mauritius can really step in and lead the African continent. So to make causal AI models reliable, we need diverse data, like I just kind of mentioned. Currently, the AI models that we have are really only as good as the data that they're trained on, right? And so the data that we have for medical data that is currently training our AI models is overwhelmingly Caucasian and homogeneous. And they can't really capture the true mechanisms of health and disease across humanity that way. So the paradox of personalized medicine is to understand a lot of people really well, you have to understand, or to understand one person really well, you have to understand a lot of people really well. And so by collaborating globally and including Africa from the very beginning, and we can make all these causal models smarter and more generalizable. So we're entering a decade where AI and global collaborations can finally reveal the causal underpinnings of aging and use the understanding and to extend health span. A country like Mauritius with the vision to lead this change by contributing data and clinical insight, you guys can help us make our AI smarter and more equitable. And if we're going to make longevity a human achievement, it must be based on causality and not just coincidence. We can build these data research with African populations and not just around them to help make longevity more accessible and affordable. And so we can extend life, the healthy part of life, and make health predictable, personalized, and accessible for everyone. So I just want to give a quick shout out to my team. This wouldn't be possible without them. The African continent is actually near and dear to my heart. Most of my team is based in Addis, Ethiopia. So we have a lot of experience here, and this is an amazing team to work with and an amazing continent to work on. So that's it for me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. One of the questions I asked James, and I was just wondering to get your thoughts too, of where do you see this going for you and Rejuve Bio? What's if we look 10 years down the road, what gets you excited, and what's possible?
What I see is possible is we're building our platform really to help with translational medicine, and so getting across that translational valley of death, like I mentioned, which is a term we have in benchtop biology, where most research dies getting into a clinic. So really, I see AI helping to shorten that valley by finding the real causal mechanisms of these pathways at the beginning. I'm hoping that we can use AI to really solve some of the basic science questions, particularly around aging and longevity, to construct that real systems biology model at the beginning so that we can attack these chronic diseases before they crop up. And so that's something that really gets me excited, and especially with some of the newer AI architectures that we're implementing that aren't just LLMs like spitting patterns back at you, that gets me excited for the possibility that it can actually help us find mechanistic causes. And then also the possibility of sifting through data sets that maybe have been discarded or thought that there was nothing in them, and seeing what could possibly be in those data sets. So,
asking for someone who is not me necessarily, but might be in his 60s, is this something that I can expect in the next, while I'm alive?
Oh, I don't want to put like any hard numbers on it, but I think it's close. Yeah.
Good.
I'm optimistic.
If Mauritius wanted to build a national kind of AI initiative for longevity. What core elements do you think might be needed first to kind of set that foundation?
I think, a data collection registry of some sort. We actually have a sister company called Rejuve AI that's launched an app that collects human data. They actually got an IRB approved system to do that, and so that's a downloadable app that people can use and collect data that way. The data collection is kind of the most important part for an AI system, and then especially getting diverse data. Like James said, more data isn't always better, but it depends on where the data comes from. And so that's really like the base. And then then contracting people to develop those systems. I mean, our systems that we're developing are actually open source, and so a company like ours could come in and then help with those data sets and find out what's in there. So,
So more data is not always better.
No.
But we need data.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to move on, and I'm going to ask you to stick on stage, and then we're going to invite, well, first of all, thank you for a wonderful presentation.